I first want to say thanks to your staff here at CrossPoint Church. They are an amazing group of people who have worked diligently over the last couple of weeks to put together the services for tonight, tomorrow night, for Sunday morning, and they have been fantastic. Some of them are sitting back in the booth right now, and I just want to say thank you to all of you. And if you would just do that, yeah. So we're going to take a look into a mindset that I think it's important for us to make sure that we have as we come to communion tonight, because Jesus had been walking with his disciples at this point for 3 years, and they had a mindset that sometimes I think it's hard for us to get our own brains around as we come to communion. But I want to make sure that we do that tonight. I want to make sure that there is something that you understand that they caught that night, even though reluctantly, even though they pushed back at times. And you're going to hear that in the passage I'm about to read in John chapter 12, because there was pushback. There are lots of places in Scripture where Jesus would make a statement that he's going to Jerusalem and he's going to die, and they were like, no way, that's not us, that's not you, we're not going. And I think if they could have tied him up and held him for ransom, they would have, to keep him from going to Jerusalem. He literally looks at one of the disciples, the guy named Peter. He looks at him and says, no, you cannot do this. As a matter of fact, the way you're talking is not godly. It's of Satan. Get behind me, because this is my job. This is what I came for. You see, what he wants us to understand is that there is a purpose behind what he's doing. And as he does so, he changes everything. So I want to read for you a passage from John chapter 12. So if you have a Bible with you, if you have a Bible app with you, go ahead and open that up. We're in John chapter 12. I'm going to begin at verse 20, and I'm going to read all the way through 36. I know that sounds like it might be a lot, but I want you to catch what's happening. So John chapter 20, written by one of the 12, right? At least that's our understanding. This is John, the youngest of the disciples. He's probably a young teenager. He is the one who outlives all the others. He's the only one who is not murdered for his faith. He dies old, an old man, it says, after years and years of exile. So rather than kill him, they just sent him to an island where he had to live by himself. Sometimes I wonder if there aren't penalties worse than death, right? John writes from his own understanding of what was going on. I've had a conversation with a guy this morning, as a matter of fact. We were talking. He's like, this whole book, this is really hard to read. And I said, well, where are you at in reading it? And he's like, well, I tried starting at the beginning, and that just didn't work well. I got a couple chapters in, and it got a little wonky with some tower somewhere named Babel or something, and then the whole flood thing, and so we said, well, start with John. Start with John. I know it feels weird to start later in the book, but start with John. He's one of the 4 gospel writers: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. But John, unlike the other 3, tells a love story and actually references himself as the disciple Jesus loved. Yeah. Amazing, right? He tells a love story. And from his perspective, he tells what he saw firsthand. And so it says here in this passage, as he tells it, that there is something significant that had taken place this night, 2,000 some years ago. Here's what it says. Some Greeks who had come to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration paid a visit to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee. They said, "Sir, we want to meet Jesus." Philip told Andrew about it, and they went together to ask Jesus. Jesus replied, "Now the time has come for the Son of Man to enter into his glory. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many kernels, a plentiful harvest of new lives. Those who love their life in this world will lose it. Those who care nothing for their life in this world will keep it for an eternity. Anyone who wants to be my disciple must follow me, because my servants must be where I am, and the Father will honor anyone who serves me. Now my soul is deeply troubled. Should I pray, Father, save me from this hour? But this is the very reason I came. Father, bring glory to your name. Then a voice spoke from heaven, saying, I have already brought glory to my name, and I will do so again. When the crowd heard the voice, some thought it was thunder, while others declared an angel had spoken. Then Jesus told them, the voice was for your benefit, not mine. The time for judging this world has come, when Satan, the ruler of this world, will be cast out. And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to myself. He said this to indicate how he was going to die. The crowd responded, we understood from Scripture that the Messiah would live forever. How can you say that the Son of Man will die? Just who is the Son of Man anyway? Jesus replied, my light will shine for you just a little longer. Walk in the light while you can, so the darkness will not overtake you. Those who walk in the darkness cannot see where they are going, but put your trust in the light while there is still time. Then you will become children of the light. After saying these things, Jesus went away and was hidden from them. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. There are things we would all love to see, right? I mean, aren't there some things on your list that you'd love to see in your lifetime? Maybe you've checked some things off of the list, right? Usually we each have different things we want to see because we're all a bit different, right? We all have different likes. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different things that we want to see and don't want to see. Someone wants to see the Grand Canyon, probably, right? There's probably somebody in the room who would love to see the Grand Canyon. I was fortunate enough to check that one off my list. Someone wants to see Big Ben. Grand Canyon, Big Ben. And you have to speak with a British accent when you do that, right? I've done both so far. I've checked both of those off my list. Someone wants to see the Great Wall of China. Okay, that's me. I just want to see it. I just think that must be amazing, right? I mean, there are all kinds of things we want to see. Someone in the room wants to see something closer to home, like a kayak ride on the Swatara Creek. Maybe. There's some of us who would just like to see more of our family members, right? Like my mom, if she were here. Okay, I just threw her under the bus. There's others who would like to see a job change, right? Boy, if I have to go to this job another day. There's all kinds of things we want to see, right? There's some who would love to see their DNA and their ancestry and find out where they came from, to see it all charted out. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? Someone wants to see that. There's some people in the room who would love to see a famous musician or actor and have their picture taken, a selfie, right? With an actor or a singer or somebody, and maybe get their autograph. We have all kinds of things we want to see, but for most of us, one of the things we don't go around saying is, I want to see Jesus. Come on. Make that happen, right? Because here's what we know. Stay with me for a minute, right? Here's what we know. If you're seeing Jesus, one of two things has happened. You're dead, or it's getting really freaky. Right? I mean, those are the kind of, in my mind, those are the two options, right? Seeing Jesus is not something you hear people say. You know, you don't walk down the street hearing somebody say, you know, I'd really like to see Jesus today. And you just don't hear that. But there was a day when that was being said. There was a day when people were saying, I want to see Jesus. Listen to the passage. Some Greeks who had come to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration paid a visit to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee. They said, "Sir, we want to meet Jesus." The last time I heard somebody say, "I'm ready to meet Jesus," was someone on their deathbed. I'm ready to meet Jesus. I'm ready to go home, right? We've heard that. That's not what they were saying. They were saying they want to see Jesus. Either they wanted to hear a message that he would give them of hope and of encouragement, or they wanted healing from some disease or illness for themselves or for somebody in their family or for a friend or somebody they loved, or they wanted to see Jesus free them from demon possession of some kind, or they wanted to see him do some kind of a miracle. Maybe they were thinking he was going to do a parlor trick, pull napkins out of his sleeve or something. I don't know. But we just want to see him. Can we just see him? And as Jesus is on his way from Bethany to Jerusalem, the word is out about him. And people want to see him. On Sunday, we celebrated an event that took place over 2,000 years ago called Palm Sunday, the triumphant entry of Jesus into the city of Jerusalem, because people wanted to see him. They just wanted to get a glimpse. At this point in his life, 3 years into his ministry, he is, for all intents and purposes, a superstar in our understanding of someone who has become relatively famous. And people just line the streets to see him. He's coming to Jerusalem to do something purposeful. First, celebrate Passover. Second, die. But they want to see Jesus. We just want to see Jesus. And the news about him had gone all over the place. It says that the people who are asking about him were Greeks. That means in the Greco world, the word about Jesus had traveled so abundantly in the years that he had been doing his work and doing his ministry that people all the way over in Greece are hearing about him. And as they take the journey to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover, they know Jesus is there. And they have heard about him all the way over in their home country, in their homeland of Greece, and they want to see him. I mean, why not, right? Hey, we're in town, he's in town, let's knock on the door and see if he'll say hi. What's the worst thing that can happen? He turns us into a newt. Okay, that's probably not what he's going to do, so let's knock on the door, right? He's famous, though. Maybe he'll turn us away. Maybe he's the person we've heard. He is this close to becoming global news, right? He's just entered into the city. He's hidden himself away a bit. And he's probably at this point in this passage, as John relates this story to us, relates his account, he's probably already in the upper room, in the City of David section of Jerusalem, where there was a group of monastics who had an upper room. I've been there. It's amazing. But what we learn from John is something I want all of us to catch tonight. The writer of these words discovers that their timing is bad. The timing of these Greeks is just not good. Philip goes to Andrew, Peter's brother Andrew. That Andrew? Philip goes to Andrew. They knew each other. They were from the same town. They were all from Bethsaida. They knew each other. Philip goes to Andrew, Peter's brother, because that's kind of the chain of command, as we can tell, and says there's a couple people here to see the master. So together, Philip and Andrew go to tell Jesus together, hey, you go with me. Come on, let's go together and tell him. Let's go together and say, hey, there's a couple people here who want to see you. Here's what's going on. Remember, these two disciples have been called by Jesus and who have been a part of the inner circle of 12. They know him, and they know that there are people here who want to see him, and that's one of the favorite things he loves to do. And so here in what we suspect is probably the upper room already, and the Passover meal is being processed and prepared while they wait. And the heaviness of the evening has yet to come upon them. These two apostles figure, why not? We're all just kind of sitting around waiting. Let's go ask him if he'll see them. They have been in a number of situations where Jesus was willing to see someone. Over and over again, people would come to Jesus and say, would you do something for me? Would you listen to me? Would you talk to me? They had actually been chastised not long before this by Jesus himself when parents brought their children to him and they were like, no, get your kids out of here. And he's like, bring the children to me. And they're like, okay, so we've got a couple Greeks at the door. We better tell them, right? Because over and over again, they had seen people come to Jesus and have him receive them. So much so that one of the times that they saw it was so radical, they're sitting in a room of a house, and the next thing you know, the roof starts getting torn off, and some guy gets lowered down. And Jesus actually pays attention to that. And we got a couple Greeks at the door. We better tell him what's going on and that there's someone here to see him. Once they heard him tell the religious leaders that he was going to hang out with all kinds of people, even the ones they thought he shouldn't hang out with, especially those who they thought he shouldn't hang out with. So they went to Jesus. They said, hey, there's some people here to see you. And Jesus' answer is the beginning of a turn of events in Jerusalem that would not just change their lives, but change every single life from that moment on. It would change the entire world. In effect, Jesus said to them, tonight is when it all begins. The end is near, and a new thing is about to happen. I can't see these guys right now. If they stick around in town for another day, they'll see me. They'll see me. But not right now. Because he knows what's coming. He knows that he's going to die. And so in this passage, he says something that many of us have heard. And some of us have heard it taken out of context, but many of us have heard this passage. He says this, I tell you the truth. Unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many kernels, many new kernels, a plentiful harvest of new lives. It's a statement that's true, and we know it's true because most of us in this room have lived long enough to know the reality of something that dies so that something better can come along. But we don't have to like it, do we? As a matter of fact, most of us don't like it. We don't like the idea of something old needing to die in order for something new to come along. Can't we just marry the two together? Can't we just keep them together somehow? Can't we just make it all fit together? Have you seen that kind of mess? I have. People trying to hold on to the old and yet needing to move into the future somehow. Farmers understand this as they scatter seeds behind them. They know that seeds just sitting in a bag in the barn are not going to produce anything. They have to allow the process of death and life to happen if they're going to see a future for their farm. At the risk of saying something about some of you in this room, it came to my mind, and I know this might sound a bit crazy because I really don't understand this. But there are women in this room who understand this process if you've given birth. That some old part of you is gone because you were bringing new life. And you can never go back to what you were. You will always be the new thing. Mom. Every one of us has had some experience of losing something we valued so that something new could take place, whether it was that baby blanket that was your favorite that we have pictures of you holding it, right? Saw one of those of one of my own kids the other day. Or the bike that you outgrew that you thought, this is terrible, they're going to take away my bike, but you were getting a new one. Or maybe it was the job you lost. And you felt so devastated. What am I going to do now? Was the only thing you could think. But God had a better job just around the corner waiting. Or what about that girl or the guy who you thought was the one? Only to find out there was somebody else who was really the one? And that's the one you're now with forever. There's a long list of all the things that we have had to let die in order to have something better. Can I give you just a brief list? VCRs. Anybody still have one? There are a few hands that just went up. I can't believe you admitted that. Wow. Some people still use them. DVD players are actually going away, and because now it's Blu-ray players and Netflix, right? How about this? 8 tracks. Yeah, baby. Right up there with vinyl. All right. Or cassettes. I threw one away the other day. I found it somewhere. I was like, what? Oh, my Lord. And how about Sony Walkmans? Now it's MP3 players and music through Spotify or Pandora. You can carry it in your phone. You can have music anywhere you go. I walked into the church tonight, and one of the persons who met me right at the door said, where's the music coming from? Oh, I said, it's my phone. I was just listening. Yeah. I mean, lots of things have had to die. How about those big, really boxy cars we used to drive around? We now call them antiques. Or how about bell bottoms? Okay, wait, some things are allowed to die. Bell bottoms, I think, are right, yeah. Okay, so we don't like the process. We get it. But even though we know things often get better, Jesus is right. How can anything good happen unless we are willing to let what is currently happening die? But wait, not you, Lord, right? I mean, that's what they challenge him with. But not you, the Messiah. The Messiah is supposed to last forever. He's supposed to live for an eternity. So not you. They reminded him of that, the Old Testament passages about the Messiah living forever. It can't be you. Jesus in that upper room with that small band of followers saying to them, it's time for me to go. And they're saying, well, maybe you're not the one yet. Well, who is the Son of Man then? And he says, look, it's me. But I'm telling you that unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many new kernels. Listen, a plentiful harvest of new lives. One life for all. This band of followers, their lives are now changed forever. Jesus has to be about his Father's business, and he tells them so. He tells them it's time for him to be lifted up. Now is the time for him to crush Satan like they said would happen back in the very beginning in Genesis. Now is time for the Son of Man to be seen for who he really is. Now is the time. I just can't see these Greeks right now. If they stick around another day or so, they'll see me, and they're going to see in darkness. And they will see hatred, and they will see pain, and they will see death, and they will see the master becoming the servant of all. And they will see the greatest becoming the least.